Hi everyone, my name is Mikayla.Williams and this is my older adult oral video presentation. The developmental stage from Erikson's theory that I chose is stage 5. And this stage occurs between the ages of 12 years old and 18 years old. And this is the identity versus confusion stage. It occurs during your adolescence. And during this stage, you develop your sense of self as well as your personal identity. You learn who you are, what you like, and what you don't like. You do this through exploration of yourself as well as your environment. And this during this stage, you also are establishing independence. Um, in my opinion, this is the most important stage because you learn so much between the ages of 12 and 18 that you carry with you for the rest of your life, and you begin to develop your opinions that you will carry with you for the rest of your life, and you also learn how to defend these opinions. So I interviewed my uncle, my paternal uncle, my dad's brother. He's about 60 years old and he grew up in South Carolina. Um, and his four most important experiences that he talked a lot about that contributed to his development during this stage is middle school, high school, trouble with the law, and sports. He said that middle school were his easier years. He was start just beginning to find himself and to um, learn his likes and dislikes. He said that high school was a little harder. That's when the hormones set in and where the peer pressure, really comes in. Um, the trouble with the law um, came in around his high school years, and there were times when he found himself running with the wrong crowd, just attempting to fit in, and he would end up running from the police. And during this stage, he talked about how there's during between the ages of 12 and 18, he was a thrill seeker, and being a thrill seeker led him in positions where he was running from the police or having encounters with the police that he was only having because he was finding himself and just trying to quote unquote have fun, but he needed to learn how to have fun the right way. Um, Sports is actually one of the ways that he learned to have fun the right way, the legal way. Um, he said that sports kept him out of trouble, and by sports I mean football. Football kept him out of trouble, keeping him on the field and out of the streets. He said is one thing that actually may have kept him alive to this day. Some challenges and accomplishments that we talked about. Some challenges that he had were finding a love partner in high school, having a crush on the girl that doesn't want you back was a challenge for him. Puberty, hormones, and sexually developing was a challenge for him because high school. He said high school. People are rough. High school's rough. Teenagers are rough. They're mean. And trying to navigate through that while you're finding yourself can be a very difficult experience. Fitting in and peer pressure is what I touched on that a little bit before with the whole run-ins with the police. When you're trying to fit in, you may find yourself doing things that you actually do not want to do. And that is why I feel like this stage is important because during this stage, you learn how to not do things that you do not want to do. Um, you learn to do more of what you do like to do. Some accomplishments during this stage was his first job. He said, I believe he said he got around 15 or 16 years old, and it was at a little store, a little town local store. Um, and this was his first opportunity to have daily interactions with others outside of classmates and family members. And he actually said that he learned a lot of customer service skills during that job that he took with him later on in life. Um, He learned a lot about working with different types of people, working at this store, and just seeing a variety of different faces and meeting a variety of different personalities. Sports is another accomplishment. As I stated, sports had a very positive influence on his life and development as a person, and making friends. And when I say making friends, I mean running with the right crowds. So supportive friends that and his friends, some of his supportive friends were also teammates. So he got to, interact with them on and off the field, and they supported each other on and off the field. So the psychosocial crisis for this stage of Erickson's theory is the identity versus role confusion. Failure at this stage can lead to struggles with establishing roles in life, and failure at this stage can also lead to rebellion because you are unsure of yourself and your identity. If you do not know who you are, what you like, what you want, and what you stand for in life, you will be lost. And that that is what this stage is about. That's what this stage's crisis is. It's you finding yourself, and if you don't, where will you end up? It won't, it might, it's not, it's very important to know what you stand for and what you like and don't like in life so that you may engage in more of the things that make you happy. So, some inhibiting factors of my interviewee's development would be the first one is race. So, he's African American, and that that growing up down south, African American, he encountered a lot of racism, and he just had to learn how to just work through it. He said that a lot of times he would just have to keep his head down, which is pretty sad as a kid. You can't really express yourself the way you want to or be the person that you want to because you're being discriminated against simply because of the color of your skin. Um, and I mean, sadly, we still have that going on today. Poverty, a broken home, and absence of his father are also things that inhibited his development slightly. Because uh, he was a young boy having to get a job to try and help his mom make ends meet because his father walked out on them. And that's sad. And it also can hurt the development of a child during adolescence because you're forcing this child to step into a role that they are not ready to take on and they should not have to take on, essentially. Um, Religion, he's Christian and he came from a Christian community. Um, Religion was something that was stressed in his family. Um, and he said it people who didn't agree with his views as a Christian could be inhibiting. Another inhibiting factor was that his highest level of education was a high school diploma. And that, um, having a high school diploma is an accomplishment, but as we all know, when you're trying to, you know, reach for certain goals in life, um, the more education that you get, the better. Back then, it was an accomplishment, but at the same time, he said that because that is where he stopped, he finds himself sometimes regretting that he did not continue further in school, because it would have helped him to develop even more and to maybe accomplish some bigger goals. So, uh, continuing with the psychosocial crisis, talking more about oppression, being African American, It's definitely a form of oppression, especially with development and socially, due to the discrimination that African Americans face on a day-to-day basis. Um, Not being afforded opportunities that everyone else is afforded due because of where he comes from, his community. Um, it was a little run down. It did not receive the same. These lower income minority communities don't receive the same services and funding that suburban white communities receive. And another form of oppression, coming from a broken home and having to help his mother make ends meet, and only having a high school diploma. I touched on both of those, so I don't want to take up too much time explaining. But overall, these things um, contributed to the oppression that he experienced, and also did slightly hinder his development. So, psychosocial crisis resolution, helping and hindering. So there were some things that we discussed that he felt as though that he had in his life that helped his development during this stage. Having supportive family members, educators, and coaches was extremely important to him, and he really, really is grateful for all of the adults that were in his life that um, he says helped make him the man that he is today. The bonds that he developed. When we talk about bonds, we talked about bonds that he developed with his teammates that he felt were extremely important. They are bonds that he says he will remember for the rest of his life. Um, because those bonds that he developed with people taught him many different lessons that he will carry with him forever. Um, Attitude, peer influence, and peer pressure. So this is kind of helping and hindering. So attitude I have on here because we talked about how sometimes, having a positive attitude can help your development, but having a negative attitude can hurt your development. So attitude is something that we discuss on both ends of the spectrum because it it varies so much, but it's actually very important because your attitude controls your outlook on certain situations. Peer influence and peer pressure, as I touched on, the run-ins with the law that he had were from trying to fit in and engaging in activities he said he knew deep down were not right. But just being a thrill seeker, uh, and he said he thanks God that he got out of these situations because he feels as though these negative situations actually helped his development instead of hindered it because he was able to get out and learn his lesson. Um, and that's my next point. Negative experiences can teach positive lessons. Um, and another hindering factor is the single parent home and struggling to make ends meet. As I stated before, he was a young boy forced to get a job to help his mother make ends meet because his father walked out on them, and that forced him into a role he was not ready to assume. So that was a pretty hard time for him.